The bathroom door slammed into my shoulder blade before I realized Cooper had grabbed me. 1 second I was clearing table 9, the next I was skidding across black and white tile, his fingers knotted in my collar, the fluorescent lights overhead turning everything into a washed-out crime scene. The door kicked shut behind us. The lock clicked. This is it, I thought. This is where it gets worse. Cooper's face was red, slick with something that looked like panic wearing a rage mask. You think I don't notice? His breath was 90-proof whiskey and old coffee. You've been poking around the vendor invoices, asking questions about the linen deliveries. I wasn't. Don't lie to me. His knuckles pressed into my throat, not choking, just reminding me he could. You're going to stop counting things that don't concern you, or you're going to stop working here. Understand? My bag was in my locker. Inside it, 3 late notices, a parent-teacher conference slip for June, a grocery list I'd rewritten twice trying to make $30 stretch. I needed this job. June needed this job. Cooper, I started, but my voice snagged. Another voice answered instead. Low measured, vowels shaped by Italy and smoothed by years in the city. She can answer when you let go. We both turned. A man in a navy suit stood beside the sinks, hands still damp, holding a folded paper towel like he had all the time in the world. I'd seen him before, corner booth last week, quiet, the kind of presence the restaurant leaned away from without anyone saying why. Beard trimmed close. Tattoos peeking above his collar. Eyes calm in a way that made shouting look stupid. Cooper blinked. This is staff only. The man dropped the towel in the trash with a sound like punctuation. So am I. For the next minute. He didn't move forward, just shifted his weight, and suddenly he was between us, owning the space the way some people own silence. Let her go. Something in Cooper's grip loosened. I stumbled back, clutching my collar, tasting blood where I'd bitten my cheek. You're done for tonight, Summer. The stranger used my name without asking for it. Take the back exit. I can't just leave. He pulled a slim leather wallet from his jacket and set a black card on the sink. Not cash. A card. Heavy, embossed with a gold crest I didn't recognize. You'll be paid for the shift you didn't work. Then to Cooper, still without looking at him, apologize. Cooper's laugh came out like a cough. The stranger finally looked at him, and I watched Cooper shrink. I said apologize. Sorry. Cooper's voice cracked. I'm sorry, Summer. The stranger nodded once, toward the door. Go. I went. Because my feet moved before my brain caught up, because the last thing I saw in the mirror was the stranger adjusting his cuff, a tiny gold cross at his throat, and the absolute certainty in his posture that this bathroom now belonged to him. I clocked out. I grabbed my coat. I stood in the alley with the black card in my hand, staring at the phone number embossed in gold, and tried to remember how to breathe. My phone buzzed. Unknown, lunch. 2 o'clock. Come hungry. I looked at the card. At the number. At the back door of the Black Finch, where Cooper was probably still standing exactly where the stranger left him. I didn't know who he was. But I knew, bone-deep blood certain, that I'd just been pulled into something I couldn't see the edges of. I didn't call the number. He called me. Noon the next day, my phone buzzed while I was staring at June's permission slip for a field trip I couldn't afford. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Summer reads. The voice was familiar, low, unhurried, shaped by vowels that had crossed an ocean decades ago. Yes. Lunch. 2 o'clock. Come hungry. He rattled off an address 3 blocks from the Black Finch, then hung up before I could say no. I should have ignored it. Thrown the black card in a drawer and pretended last night never happened. But Cooper's knuckles had left a shadow on my throat, faint but there, and the way the stranger had said go, like he knew I'd obey because obedience was the smart choice, that stuck with me harder than the bruise. So at 1:58, I pushed open the door to Nana's, a trattoria so small I'd walked past it 100 times without noticing. The sign was hand-painted. The windows were fogged with steam. Inside, the stranger stood behind the counter in shirt sleeves, a pan hissing under his hand. No apron. No hesitation. He moved like someone who'd been born with tongs in his palm. Sit, he said, nodding toward the bar. It's almost ready. I sat. There was no one else in the restaurant, just an older man wiping down tables in the back, pretending not to watch us. The stranger plated tagliatelle with mushrooms, a drizzle of something dark and fragrant, a scatter of herbs. He set it in front of me, then plated his own and took the stool beside mine. Close enough to talk quietly. Far enough to let me breathe. Eat first, he said. I picked up my fork. The first bite was better than anything I'd tasted in months. Earthy, rich, the kind of food that made you slow down. He watched me eat for a moment, then started on his own plate with the same precision he'd used washing his hands last night. Yesterday was theater, he said finally. I don't enjoy theater. I prefer results. I set my fork down carefully. What do you want? You in a role that suits you. He didn't look up from his pasta. Front of house operations. Day shifts, benefits. You audit intake, scheduling, and vendor flow. You'll fix what's broken. What's broken? I asked, because I wanted to hear him say it. Cooper Bryan. No hesitation. And the people who own him. I laughed once, dry and sharp. You own him. I don't own anything I can't replace. He set his fork down and turned to face me fully for the first time. Up close, his eyes were dark, patient, the kind of eyes that waited for you to catch up to what he'd already figured out. Cooper signed with men who borrow saints' names and use bleach for cash. They're using your floor to rinse their money. I want it stopped. My stomach tightened. And you think I'll help you because you're nice? He smiled with his eyes, not his mouth. Because you notice things. Because you keep old machines alive with duct tape and logic. Because you keep your head down until it matters, and then you look men like Cooper in the face even when he hurts you. That's not noticing, I said quietly. That's paying rent. Something softened in him, just a flicker, gone as fast as it came. How old is your sister? My fork stilled. 12. He nodded like he already knew. Night classes, then. Forensic accounting. On me. Your salary is legit, reported, taxed. You'll report anomalies to me, and only me. You'll never break the law for me. He sipped water, eyes steady over the rim. I'll put that in writing. The offer sat between us like a third person at the bar. Too good. Too clean. Too much like a trap with velvet lining. No violence, I said, testing the edge of the word. No theatrics, he corrected gently. Violence is noisy. I prefer doors closing on time. Doors closing on time, I repeated. What does that mean? It means Cooper gets a choice. Walk away clean, or stay and face what's already waiting for him. He turned back to his plate, twirling pasta he didn't eat. It means the men who own him lose their faucet without a single broken bone. It means you get paid to do what you're already doing, counting, noticing, keeping your head down until the numbers stop making sense. And if they find out? They won't. Because you're careful. Because you'll do this legally, on paper, the way your mother would have. The air left my lungs. You knew my mother? I knew of her. His voice was softer now, careful. Mara reads. She kept books for people who didn't deserve her precision. She asked the right questions. And when she found something wrong, she didn't look away. My hands were shaking. I folded them in my lap. She died in a car accident. I know. He didn't say more. Didn't need to. The weight of what he wasn't saying filled the silence. I looked at the black card still in my coat pocket, at the man beside me who'd cooked me lunch like we were old friends, at the choice sitting between us like a contract written in air. "I'll look," I said finally. "At the books. At the patterns. But I'm not signing anything today." "Fair." He stood, cleared both plates with the efficiency of someone who'd worked a kitchen line. "The card has my number. Use it when you're ready. Or when you find something that doesn't add up." "And if I don't find anything?" He smiled, small and knowing. "You will." I walked back to the Black Finch in a daze, the taste of mushrooms and garlic still on my tongue, the weight of his offer pressing against my ribs. When I pushed through the staff entrance, the first thing I noticed was Cooper. He stood by the host's stand, shoulders hunched, eyes down, moving like a man who'd been kicked and was still waiting for the next blow. When he saw me, he flinched, actually flinched, and turned away fast. The second thing I noticed, 2 men at the bar. Not regulars. Not tourists. They wore dark jackets despite the warmth, and their attention kept sliding toward the host stand, toward Cooper, toward the kitchen door. One of them had a rosary wrapped around his knuckles, the beads clicking softly as he turned them. Saints' names and bleach for cash. I clocked in, tied my apron, grabbed my order pad. My hands didn't shake. But as I stepped onto the floor, I felt the weight of their eyes follow me, not hostile, not yet. Just watching. Counting. Noticing. Cooper wouldn't look at me. The men at the bar wouldn't stop. And somewhere 3 blocks away, a stranger was washing dishes in a trattoria, waiting for my call. I touched the card in my pocket. Not yet. But soon. The envelope came on Tuesday. I was leaving the subway, juggling my bag and a coffee I couldn't afford but needed anyway, when a courier in a neon vest stepped into my path. "Summer reads." I nodded, confused. He shoved a manila envelope into my hands and disappeared into the crowd before I could ask who'd sent it. The envelope wasn't sealed. Inside, a single photograph, printed on glossy paper. June. Outside her school, backpack slung over one shoulder, laughing at something her friend was saying. Her hoodie was unzipped. Her hair was everywhere. She looked so small. I flipped the photo over. 3 words, scrawled in black marker, "Keep your head down." My coffee hit the pavement. I didn't hear it splash. They were watching my sister. They knew where she went to school. They knew what time she got out. They'd been close enough to take this photo, close enough to touch her. I made it to the restaurant on autopilot, the photo folded and hidden in my apron pocket, my hands steady only because I refused to let them shake. Cooper was already there, pacing near the office, his phone pressed to his ear. He saw me and turned away fast, his voice dropping to a hiss. The 2 men from yesterday weren't at the bar. But I felt them anyway, in the way Cooper moved, in the weight of the envelope against my hip, in the certainty that whatever I did next, someone would be counting. I clocked in, tied my apron, smiled at the morning prep cook. Then I went to the POS and pretended it was broken. It wasn't hard to sell. The point-of-sale system was held together with duct tape and prayers, a relic from the previous owner that crashed twice a week and made every server want to throw it through a window. I'd kept it alive for 2 years with resets and workarounds, so when I told the floor manager it was acting up again, he just sighed and waved me off. I pulled up the vendor history. It should have been simple. Linen supplier bills us, we pay, we get towels and tablecloths. But the numbers didn't breathe right. The invoices came in tidy cycles, always just under the threshold that would trigger a secondary approval. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork. The quantities were consistent. The prices weren't. I cross-referenced the payments against the actual deliveries logged in our inventory system. We were being billed for 3 times what we received. I opened a new tab and searched the supplier name, Coastline Linen Services, LLC. The website was clean, professional, filled with stock photos of folded towels and smiling hotel staff. The contact address was a pier-adjacent office building I recognized, too nice for a laundry service, too quiet for legitimate traffic. I dug deeper. The landlord was listed in public records, Street Cecilia Holdings. I Googled it. A single-page website. A phone number that rang to voicemail. And buried in a cached news article from 3 years ago, a passing mention, the non-profit, headed by Father Dominic Rossi, provides community outreach and property management services. Rossi. Saints' names and bleach for cash. My stomach turned. I minimized the browser and stared at the POS screen, watching the cursor blink. Cooper walked past the host stand. I caught his reflection in the dark screen, shoulders tight, eyes down, moving like a man waiting for the hammer to fall. He'd been skimming too. Not much. Just enough to skim the cream off the top before the real money moved through. Pathetic. Greedy. Stupid. I pulled out my phone and opened the text thread with the number from the black card. Found the leak. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Good. Don't fix it yet. Learn the rhythm. I stared at the screen. My first instinct was to shut it down, to close the hole and pretend I'd never seen it. But that wasn't what he wanted. He wanted me to watch. To document. To let the machine keep running so I could see how all the parts moved. How long? Until you can predict the next cycle. Then we close it. I pocketed my phone and took a slow breath. June's face flashed behind my eyelids, laughing, unzipped hoodie, unaware of the camera. They'd watched her to send me a message. So I'd stop counting. Stop noticing. Stop asking questions that made men like Cooper nervous. But fear was just another kind of fuel. And if they were going to watch my sister, then I was going to watch them better. I pulled up the next 2 months of invoices and started mapping the pattern. By Thursday, I had it. Every other Wednesday, Coastline Linen billed us $3,200 for deliveries that should have cost $900. The overage cycled through our account, then moved to the broker within 48 hours, clean and quiet. Cooper signed off on every invoice without question, his name scrawled at the bottom like a permission slip. I screenshotted everything. Timestamps, amounts, account numbers. I didn't download anything, didn't leave a trail. Just memorized the rhythm, the way Giorgio had said. Cooper caught me at the POS on Friday afternoon, his face pale and twitchy. What are you doing? Fixing the system, I said without looking up. It keeps crashing when I try to pull vendor reports. Leave it. I'll call the tech guy. It's fine. I've almost got it. I said leave it. His voice cracked on the edge of panic. I looked up at him, met his eyes. He flinched. Okay, I said quietly. I'll leave it. He walked away fast, pulling his phone out before he even reached the office. I watched him go, then closed the screen and logged out. I'd seen enough. That night, I was walking down the back hallway toward the stockroom when I caught movement in the mirror at the end of the hall. A man. Not Cooper. Not anyone I recognized from the staff. He was standing near the delivery entrance, half hidden by stacked crates, his phone out. The camera was angled at the linen delivery tags taped to the wall, batch numbers, dates, vendor codes. He snapped 3 photos, quick and efficient, then pocketed his phone and turned toward the exit. I stepped back into the doorway before he could see me. My heart hammered. I knew Giorgio's presence by now, the quiet weight of it, the way rooms rearranged themselves. This wasn't that. This was something else. Someone else. The door clicked shut. The hallway went silent. I pulled out my phone and typed fast. Someone just photographed the linen tags. Not yours. The reply came in seconds. Describe him. 5 feet 10 inches, dark jacket, rosary on his wrist. A long pause. Then. Stay visible. Don't go anywhere alone. I'm sending someone. I stared at the screen, at the empty hallway, at the mirror that had just shown me exactly how close they were. June's photo was still in my apron pocket, creased from being folded and unfolded too many times. "Keep your head down," they'd said. But my head was up now. And I was counting everything. The address Giorgio texted me wasn't a restaurant. It was a kitchen, private, tucked above a bakery that closed at 6. I climbed the narrow stairs at 7:30, my coat still smelling like fryer oil, my nerves strung tight as wire. He was already cooking when I arrived. The space was small, warm, filled with the scent of garlic and olive oil. A single table sat near the window, set for two. Giorgio stood at the stove in shirt sleeves, his jacket draped over a chair, his movements precise and unhurried. A pot simmered. A knife moved through herbs with the rhythm of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Sit," he said without turning. 5 minutes. I sat. The window overlooked a narrow street, dark except for the glow of a corner deli. Quiet. Private. The kind of place where conversations didn't leak. He plated 2 dishes, pasta with something dark and fragrant, a scatter of parmesan, a drizzle of oil that caught the light. He set one in front of me, then took the seat across, close enough that I could see the faint scar along his jaw, the way his eyes tracked my hands as I picked up my fork. "Eat first," he said. "Then we talk." The food was good. Better than good. But I could barely taste it. My mind was still on the man in the hallway, the rosary on his wrist, the photo of June folded in my bag. Giorgio ate slowly, watching me. After a few bites, he set his fork down. "Your mother worked for people who didn't deserve her," he said quietly. I froze. Mara Reeds. He said her name like he'd been carrying it for a while. She kept books for a side project tied to Rossi Morelli. Small operation, nothing flashy. She was good at her job. Too good. She found discrepancies, money moving in ways that didn't match the paperwork. So she made a copy. Just in case. My throat tightened. A copy of what? A ledger. Digital. Everything they didn't want found, routes, accounts, names. He paused. She was careful. She didn't go to the police. Didn't make noise. She just kept it. As insurance. And then she died. And then she died. His voice was softer now, edged with something that might have been regret. Car accident. Rainy night. Brakes failed on a bridge. I set my fork down carefully, my hands shaking. You think they killed her? I think brakes don't fail on their own. He met my eyes. I think she knew something was coming, and she hid that ledger somewhere they couldn't find it. Somewhere safe. Where? The Black Finch. The words hung between us like smoke. She worked there, he continued. Years ago, when it was still under the old owner. Part-time, keeping books, balancing the till. She knew the building. She knew how to hide things in plain sight. My chest felt tight. I remembered my mother's hands, the way she used to balance neighbor books at our kitchen table, her reading glasses perched on her nose. I remembered the funeral, the man with the medicated smile asking if she'd ever mentioned the names Rossi or Morelli. I'd lied and said no. Cooper, I said quietly. Giorgio nodded. His promotion wasn't random. 6 months ago, Rossi, Morelli needed a new funnel. They put Cooper in place, cleaned up the staff, made sure no one asked questions. They've been looking for that ledger ever since. And you think I can find it? I think if your mother left you anything, it's a map you don't know you have. He leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. I want that ledger, Summer. Not to escalate. Not to start a war. I want it to sever their routes, to cut them off at the knees without firing a shot. I want clean ownership. Legal. The way it should be. And what do I get? Everything we already talked about. Legal salary, night school, protection for June. And a promise, His eyes didn't waver. That I'll never ask you to break the law. That you'll never touch anything dirty. That this stays on paper, the way your mother would have wanted. I stared at him, at the scar on his jaw, at the tiny gold cross glinting at his throat. Why do you care? I asked. About keeping it legal. About clean books. I stopped, searching for the word. What I am, he said quietly, is tired of theater. Tired of blood and noise and men who think fear is the only currency. I want something that lasts. Something I can hand to my daughter without shame. He paused. Your mother understood that. She tried to do the right thing, and they killed her for it. I won't let that happen to you. My throat burned. I looked down at my plate, at the food I couldn't finish. Lipstick is armor, I said softly. He tilted his head. What? Something my mother used to say. I swallowed hard. Armor first, baby girl. Lipstick first. She never left the house without it. Like it was a ritual. Like she was putting on protection. Giorgio's expression shifted, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. She was careful. She was terrified. She was brave, he corrected gently. There's a difference. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past pressing against the present. Finally, Giorgio stood and began clearing the plates. Go back to the Black Finch, he said. Look with fresh eyes. Not for a lockbox or a safe. For something small. Something only you would recognize. And if I find it? Then we finish this. Quietly. The way doors close on time. I went back to the Black Finch the next morning before my shift. The restaurant was empty, still dark except for the kitchen prep lights. I walked through the dining room, past the bar, down the back hallway toward the staff room. The lockers were old, dented, held together with rust and stubbornness. Above them hung a mirror, scratched, cloudy, the kind that had been there so long no one noticed it anymore. I stopped. There was a nick in the frame. Small, barely visible. I remembered it from years ago, from my first summer bussing tables when I was 15 and my mother was still alive. I'd knocked my elbow into it, and she'd steadied me, her hands warm and sure. Armor first, baby girl. I stepped closer, my reflection staring back at me, pale, tired, afraid. The nick in the frame looked deliberate. Not damage. A mark. I reached up and ran my fingers along the edge. The frame shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. My breath caught. I pressed harder, and the mirror tilted forward, revealing a narrow gap between the glass and the wall. Inside, darkness. Dust. And something small, wrapped in cloth. My hands trembled as I reached in and pulled it free. A lipstick tube. Old, the brand discontinued. The cap was scratched, the label faded. But when I twisted it, it didn't turn. It clicked. Twice. And then a small steel cylinder slid into my palm, no bigger than my thumb, cold and impossibly heavy. Etched along the side, in tiny letters, Sangria. I stared at it. At my mother's hiding place. At the thing men had killed her for. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Not Giorgio. We know you're looking. Stop now, or June learns what her mother's really doing. I closed my fist around the drive. Then I texted Giorgio. I found it, I'd already found it when I texted Giorgio. The lipstick tube sat in my palm, heavier than it should be, the steel drive cold against my skin. Sangria etched in letters so small I had to squint to read them. My mother's handwriting would have been on the cloth wrapping, I was sure of it, but time had faded the ink to nothing. I stood in the staff room, the mirror still tilted forward, my reflection fractured in the cloudy glass. The tube felt like a grenade. Like a key. Like the last thing my mother had touched before someone cut her brake lines and called it an accident. My phone buzzed. Don't move it. I'm sending someone. I looked at the message, then at the drive in my hand. No. If I waited, if someone came, if this became a handoff in a back room, then it stopped being my choice. It became his operation, his timeline, his control. And I'd spent too many years watching other people control my life. I wrapped the lipstick tube back in the cloth and slipped it into my apron pocket, then carefully pushed the mirror back into place. The nick in the frame looked innocent again. Just damage. Just age. I walked out of the staff room, clocked in, tied my apron tighter. And I worked my shift. It was a slow night. Tuesday regulars, a few walk-ins, nothing that required more than muscle memory. I smiled. I poured water. I recited specials I'd memorized weeks ago. The weight in my pocket felt like a heartbeat, constant, impossible to ignore. Cooper stayed in the office. I saw him through the window once, pacing, his phone pressed to his ear, his free hand dragging through his hair. He looked thinner. Tired. Like he'd stopped sleeping. Good. At 9:40, I counted my till. Balanced to the penny. I logged my tips, grabbed my coat, and walked out the side door into the alley without saying goodbye to anyone. The city was loud with distant traffic and someone's music bleeding from an open window. I pulled out my phone and texted the number on the black card. I have it. Where do I bring it? The reply came immediately. Not here. My office. Address below. Come now. I memorized the address, then deleted the message and started walking. Giorgio's office was in a building I'd passed 100 times without noticing. Old brick, iron fire escapes, the kind of place that looked like it held architects or lawyers or small import businesses. The lobby was clean, quiet, staffed by a man in a dark suit who nodded at me like he'd been expecting me. 5th floor. End of the hall. The elevator was old, the kind with a brass gate and a hum that rattled your teeth. I rode it up alone, the lipstick tube heavy in my coat pocket, my reflection warped in the polished metal doors. The hallway was dim. A single door at the end, slightly ajar, warm light spilling out. I knocked once. Come in. Giorgio's office was smaller than I expected, wood and glass and city lights beyond the window. A desk, clean except for a single lamp and a fountain pen. 2 chairs. A bookshelf filled with ledgers and something that might have been poetry. He stood when I entered, jacket off, sleeves rolled, the gold cross at his throat catching the light. You didn't wait, he said. Not angry. Almost amused. I don't take orders well. I noticed. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. I sat. I pulled the lipstick tube from my pocket and set it on the desk between us, the steel drive still wrapped in faded cloth. Giorgio looked at it for a long moment, then at me. Your mother was extraordinary, he said quietly. My mother was scared. She was both. He didn't touch the drive. Do you know what's on it? You said a ledger. Routes, accounts, names. Everything they've built in this city for the last decade. Every shell company, every broker, every priest and landlord who's looked the other way. He leaned back slightly. This doesn't just cut a route. It dismantles the machine. I stared at the drive. At the weight of what my mother had carried. What she'd died for. I have conditions, I said. Giorgio nodded. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket, written in my own careful print during the subway ride over. I smoothed it on the desk between us. Everything legal on paper. My salary, my role, my night school tuition, all reported, all taxed. A trust for June that you can't touch, that no one can leverage. I report directly to you, and only you. No intermediaries. No theatrics. I met his eyes. And you use this data to dismantle their routes. Not to escalate. Not to start a war. You close doors. You don't blow them off the hinges. He read the list slowly, his expression unreadable. You think I'm a knife, he said finally. I think you could be. Knives cut ropes too. He picked up the fountain pen and signed the bottom of my list, his signature clean and unhurried. Then he slid the paper back to me. Everything you asked for. Legal. Binding. Witnessed if you want it notarized. And the drive. I'll have it analyzed by someone I trust. Someone careful. We'll use it to flag accounts, to coordinate with the right people, quietly. No raids. No headlines. Just doors closing on time, one after another, until there's nothing left to rinse. He leaned forward slightly. But once this starts, Summer, it doesn't stop. They'll know someone gave this to me. They'll look for who. Let them look. He studied me for a moment, then stood and extended his palm across the desk. The gold cross glinted at his throat. His hand was steady. On my name, he said. I stood. I took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, the kind of handshake that meant something. On your name, I said. We stood like that for a moment, the drive between us, the contract signed, the machine already beginning to turn. Then I let go, folded the paper, and slipped it back into my pocket. I should go. June's waiting. My driver will take you. I'll walk. I need the air. He didn't argue. He walked me to the door, opened it, then paused. Your mother would be proud, he said quietly. My throat tightened. She'd tell me I'm insane. She'd be right. He smiled, small and sad. But she'd be proud anyway. The street was quieter than it should have been. I walked toward the subway, hands in my pockets, my breath fogging in the cold. Halfway down the block, a black car idled at the curb, engine running, windows tinted, the kind of car that didn't belong to someone heading home after a long shift. I kept walking. The rear window lowered. Just a crack. Just enough for a voice to slip through. Sangria, huh? I stopped. My heart slammed against my ribs. The voice was smooth, amused, edged with something that made my skin crawl. That's a hell of a thing to carry around, sweetheart. Hope you know what you're doing. I didn't turn. Didn't run. Just stood there, frozen, while the city hummed around me. The window slid up. The car pulled away from the curb, smooth and slow, and disappeared into traffic. I waited until I couldn't see the taillights anymore. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Giorgio. They know. The reply came in seconds. I know. Keep walking. Someone's behind you. I looked over my shoulder. A man in a dark coat, 50 feet back, hands in his pockets. Not threatening. Not close. Just there. One of Giorgio's. I exhaled slowly, kept walking, and didn't look back again. The drive was in play. The contract was signed. The doors were starting to close. And somewhere in the dark, Rossi Morelli was watching. I started timing the linen deliveries. Wednesday mornings, 6:15 a.m., like clockwork. A white van with Coastline Linen Services stenciled on the side. 2 men, never the same ones, always in matching polo shirts. They'd unload half the quantity listed on the invoice, get Cooper's signature, and leave within 12 minutes. I watched from the kitchen window, coffee in hand, noting the time, the license plate, the way Cooper never checked the count. By Friday, I had 3 weeks mapped. The pattern was clean, predictable, almost elegant in its stupidity. Every delivery synced with a POS cash surge, table payments clustered within a 2-hour window, all rounded amounts, all processed by the same cashier, Marcus, a quiet guy in his 40s who'd been here longer than Cooper. I pulled Marcus's transaction logs. 800 here, 650 there, 900 on a slow Tuesday. The amounts varied just enough to look random, but the intervals didn't. Every other Wednesday, like the linen invoices, the cash surges fed into the system and disappeared into the broker's pipeline within 48 hours. Marcus wasn't skimming. He was a node. A valve. He probably didn't even know what he was moving, just following instructions, processing transactions Cooper told him to process, keeping his head down and his paycheck steady. I screenshotted everything. Timestamps, amounts, Marcus's employee ID. Then I printed a single invoice, one of Cooper's sign-offs from last month, the quantities circled in red pen. It was time to bite back. Cooper was in the office Wednesday afternoon, door half open, staring at his computer like it had personally offended him. I knocked once and walked in before he could tell me not to. We need to talk about the linen invoices. He looked up, his face pale. What about them? I set the printed invoice on his desk. You signed off on 240 towels. We received 83. I counted. You counted. His voice was flat, mechanical. I always count. It's my job now, remember? Front of house operations. I kept my tone light, professional, like this was just a clerical error and not the unraveling of everything. There are also some scheduling inconsistencies. Marcus processed 17 transactions last Wednesday during a 2-hour window when we only seated 9 tables. The math doesn't work. Cooper's jaw tightened. Marcus is fine. He's been here for years. I'm sure he is. I'm just saying the numbers don't match. I tapped the invoice. And if the numbers don't match, we need to fix it. Unless you want me to flag it for the accountant. His hand shot out and grabbed the paper, crumpling it slightly. I'll handle it. You sure? Because I can. I said I'll handle it. His voice cracked. He pulled his phone from his pocket, already scrolling, already panicking. Just go. Close the door. I closed the door. Through the window, I watched him dial, his hand shaking. He turned away from the glass, his voice low and frantic, his free hand dragging through his hair. I walked back to the floor and texted Giorgio. He's calling his handler. Good. Let him. By Thursday, the first vendor account closed. Not dramatically. Not publicly. Just a quiet email from Coastline Linen Services informing the Blackfinch that they were restructuring their client base and would no longer be able to fulfill our contract. A new supplier, legitimate, licensed, with a real warehouse and a customer service line, contacted us the same day with better rates and transparent invoicing. Cooper stared at the email like it was a death notice. Marcus was pulled for a routine scheduling review and quietly let go with 2 weeks severance. Generous, legal, no accusation attached. He left confused but grateful, no idea he'd been a cog in a machine that was now being dismantled piece by piece. The revenue dip was subtle. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. Enough that someone looking at a spreadsheet would notice, but not enough to trigger alarms. Just doors closing on time. I felt it in the air, the tightening, the pressure building. Cooper barely spoke. The kitchen staff whispered. And every time I walked past the host stand, I felt eyes on me that I couldn't see. Friday afternoon, my phone rang. June's school. Ms. Reed's? This is Principal Alvarez. I'm calling because a man came to the office today asking about your daughter's pickup schedule. My blood went cold. What man? He said he was a family friend. He didn't give a name. When we asked for ID, he left. Her voice was careful, professional, laced with concern. We've flagged your daughter's file. No one will be allowed to pick her up except you or the contacts you've listed. But I wanted you to know. Thank you. My voice didn't sound like mine. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I texted Giorgio. They went after June. I know. Picking her up? Yes. Don't go home. Take her to a friend's. I'm assigning someone. I clocked out, grabbed my coat, and ran. June was waiting in the office when I arrived, her backpack on her lap, her face confused and a little scared. Mom? What's going on? Nothing, baby. Just a mix-up. I signed her out, forced a smile, kept my voice steady. We're going to stay at Emma's for a few days. Her mom already said yes. It'll be fun. Is it because of that man? My throat tightened. What man? The one who was asking about me. Ms. Alvarez said he was weird. She looked up at me, her eyes too old for 12. Are we in trouble? No. I pulled her close, pressed my lips to the top of her head. No, baby. We're not in trouble. I'm just being careful. Emma's mom lived 3 blocks from the school, a nurse who worked nights and owed me a favor from when I'd covered her grocery run last winter. She took June without questions, just a knowing look and a promise to keep the doors locked. I walked back to the subway alone. Halfway there I felt him, the shadow Giorgio had promised. A man in a dark jacket, 50 feet back, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the street. Not threatening. Not close. Just there. I exhaled and kept walking. Saturday morning, Cooper's phone buzzed during the pre-shift meeting. I was standing near the bar, running through the specials, when I saw his face drain of color. He pulled his phone out, stared at the screen, then looked up at me. His phone was cracked, the glass spiderwebbed from a drop he'd never bothered to fix. On the screen, a single emoji. A saint with a halo. And a clock. He stared at me like I'd set the timer myself. Then he shoved the phone back in his pocket and walked out of the meeting without a word, his hand shaking, his breath coming fast. I finished the meeting. Smiled at the servers. Poured myself a water and tried not to think about the fact that I'd just become the thing Cooper feared most. Not Giorgio. Not the men with rosaries and bleach. Me. The woman who counted. My phone buzzed. Pressure's building. Stay visible. Don't go anywhere alone. I looked at the message, then at the door Cooper had just disappeared through. The doors were closing. And someone was about to get caught on the wrong side. The bathroom door clicked shut behind me before I realized Cooper had followed me in. We need to talk. His voice was low, tight, the kind of quiet that came before something broke. He stood between me and the exit, his shoulder against the door frame, his hand shaking slightly as he tried to look in control. I'd seen this before. The same fluorescent lights. The same tile. The same desperate man trying to reclaim power he'd already lost. Except this time, I wasn't alone. My phone was in my apron pocket, audio recorder already running. I'd started recording every shift 3 days ago, after the Saint emoji, after June's school, after I'd realized that documentation was the only armor that mattered. Cooper, I'm working. I kept my voice steady, professional. If you need to discuss scheduling, don't. He stepped closer, and I saw the cracks in him, sleepless eyes, unwashed hair, the tremor in his jaw that said he'd been grinding his teeth for days. You know what you did. You went through the invoices. You flagged Marcus. You're the reason everything's falling apart. I fixed errors in the system. That's my job. Your job. He laughed once, sharp and bitter. Your job is to keep your head down and stop counting things that don't concern you. But you couldn't do that, could you? You had to be just like your mother. The door opened. Cooper spun. I exhaled. Giorgio stood in the doorway, hands damp from the sinks, sleeves rolled, moving with that same unhurried certainty that made rooms rearrange themselves. He dried his hands slowly, eyes on Cooper, then folded the paper towel with exact, deliberate motions. Summer, he said quietly. Step out, please. I moved past Cooper, close enough to smell the whiskey on his breath, the fear in his sweat. As I reached the door, Giorgio's hand rested briefly on my shoulder, steadying, grounding, then released. I stepped into the hallway but didn't go far. Through the crack in the door, I could hear everything. Sit. Giorgio's voice was calm, patient, the way you'd speak to a child having a tantrum. I don't work for you. You work for men who borrow saints' names and use bleach for cash. I'm offering you something they won't, a choice. The sound of paper sliding across a surface. Resign. Sign a truthful affidavit about the vendor arrangements, the cash nodes, the delivery schedules. Walk away clean. Or I hand you to the men you serve, and we let them decide what happens when their faucet runs dry. Silence. Then the scrape of a chair. You're bluffing. I have the ledger your bosses have been looking for. Sangria. Everything Mara reads documented before they killed her. Giorgio's voice dropped, gentle but immovable. I'm giving you the exit she never got. Take it. More silence. Then the sound of pen on paper, frantic shaking, the scratch of someone trying to write fast enough to outrun their fear. Names, Giorgio said. Drop points. Be specific. Cooper's voice cracked as he spoke, listing addresses, dates, the church landlord who signed leases for buildings that didn't exist, the broker who moved money through peer-adjacent accounts with saints' names on the paperwork. He gave up everything, not out of courage, but out of the animal certainty that the man in front of him was more dangerous than the men behind him. When the pen finally stopped, Giorgio spoke again. You leave tonight. You don't contact anyone from Rossi, Morelli. You don't come back to the Black Finch. If you do this right, you disappear. If you don't, he paused. Doors close on time. Understand? Yes. Go. The door opened. Cooper stumbled out, his face gray, the affidavit clutched in his shaking hand. He looked at me, and something in his expression shifted, not anger, not fear. Regret. He stopped. Swallowed. Then leaned close enough that I could smell the desperation coming off him in waves. Your mother's death wasn't an accident. His voice was barely a whisper. Someone cut the brake lines. It was supposed to be a warning, not, he stopped, his throat working. It went too far. I'm sorry. My knees buckled. Giorgio's hand caught my elbow before I hit the floor, steadying me, holding me upright while the world tilted sideways and my mother's voice echoed in my head. Armor first, baby girl, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like insects trapped in glass. Cooper walked away. I heard his footsteps fade, heard the back door slam, heard the alley swallow him whole. Giorgio's grip on my arm was firm, warm, grounding. If that's true, he said quietly, his eyes on mine steady and certain, we close this for Mara. He meant it. I believed him. The clean suppliers came in like clockwork. Monday, new linen service, licensed and transparent, half the cost of coastline with twice the inventory. Wednesday, updated POS vendor protocols, every transaction logged and cross-referenced, every invoice requiring dual sign-off. Friday, the broker's business license flagged by a city compliance contact. Nothing dramatic, just a routine audit that would take months to resolve and freeze every account tied to his operation. Giorgio's reach was long, patient, and completely legal. Paper over blood. Doors closing on time. By the end of the week, the Black Finch felt different. Lighter. The kitchen staff stopped whispering. The servers smiled without faking it. The till balanced to the penny every night. I worked my shifts, ran my audits, and watched the machine I'd helped dismantle fade into irrelevance. Sangria was decrypted in pieces, selective, careful, only the laundering paths and payment splits. No names that would escalate into violence. No trails that would lead to bodies instead of courtrooms. Giorgio kept his promise, everything legal on paper, sharp enough to cut without drawing blood. The fallout was quiet. Rossi, Morelli's cash drip slowed to a trickle. Their handler pressured Cooper, but Cooper was already gone, disappeared into whatever life men like him built when they ran out of choices. The church landlord faced tax board inquiries. The peer-adjacent accounts were frozen pending investigation. No raids. No headlines. Just doors closing, one after another, until there was nothing left to rinse. Violence is noisy, Giorgio told me over coffee one morning, his voice calm, his eyes on the street outside the window. Paper is patient and sharp. It cuts cleaner than knives. I believed him. I'd seen it work. But Rossi, Morelli wasn't done yet. Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Not Giorgio. Your sister's walking home alone. My blood went cold. I bolted from the restaurant, my apron still tied, my hand shaking as I dialed June's phone. It rang once. Twice. Then she answered, breathless and confused. Mom? What's wrong? Where are you? Walking to Emma's. Like you said. Is anyone following you? A pause. There's a guy. Black jacket. He's been behind me since I left school. Stop walking. Go into the nearest store. Now. I heard her footsteps quicken, heard the bell above a shop door, heard her voice ask for the manager. Then Giorgio's voice on another line, cutting through the panic. I know. We have him. What? The tail. My team boxed him 2 blocks from the school. He's not going anywhere. I sagged against the alley wall, my chest heaving, my hands pressed to my face. Is June safe? She's safe. The shadow's with her. He'll walk her to Emma's and stay until you get there. What about the man who? He'll be questioned. Quietly. Then released with a message. June reads is off limits. Anyone who touches her answers to me. A pause. This doesn't happen again, Summer. I give you my word. I believed him. Because 2 hours later, when I picked June up from Emma's, the shadow was still there, a man in a dark coat, 50 feet back, eyes scanning the street. Not threatening. Not close. Just there. This was what real protection looked like when it was competent and quiet. Not theater. Not noise. Just doors closing before anyone got hurt. June looked up at me as we walked, her hand in mine, her voice small. Mom? Who was that man? Someone who made a mistake. And the other guy? The one who's been following us. I glanced back at the shadow, then down at my daughter. A friend. She nodded, trusting me the way I'd trusted my mother, the way children trust when they don't have any other choice. That night, after June was asleep, I texted Giorgio. Thank you. It's what doors closing on time looks like. I stared at the message, then at the black card still in my wallet, at the contract folded in my desk drawer. He'd kept every promise. Legal on paper. No violence. Protection for June. A job that paid rent and built a future. And all it had cost me was the fear I'd been carrying since my mother died, the certainty that asking questions meant ending up like her, broken and silent on a rainy bridge. But I wasn't silent anymore. And the doors were closing on the men who'd killed her. I pulled out my laptop, opened the forensic accounting enrollment form I'd been staring at for a week, and filled in every blank. Name, Summer Reads. Start date, next semester. Tuition, paid in full by G. Santoro, via Legal Scholarship Fund. I hit submit. Then I opened a new document and started writing down everything I'd learned. The audit trails, the vendor patterns, the way money moved through shells and saints' names and bleach-clean accounts. Not for Giorgio. For me. For June. For the next time someone needed to know how to count what others wanted hidden. My mother had left me a ledger. I was building my own. Outside, the city hummed. The shadow stood watch. And somewhere in the dark, Giorgio's people were closing doors, patient, precise, perfectly legal. No theatrics. Just results. The black finch stabilized like a broken bone finally set right. 3 weeks after Cooper's resignation, the numbers started breathing normally. Revenue tracked honestly, no phantom surges, no invoices that made my stomach turn. The staff rotation became fair, predictable, based on seniority and skill instead of whoever Cooper needed to control. My front-of-house operations hummed with the kind of efficiency that comes when people aren't afraid of their manager. I hired 2 new servers, both women, both single mothers, both grateful for day shifts and transparent pay. I updated the POS system with help from an actual IT professional instead of duct tape and prayers. I instituted weekly team meetings where people could voice concerns without fear of retaliation. The restaurant felt lighter, like we'd all been holding our breath for months and finally remembered how to exhale. But the real closure came on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks and 4 days after I'd handed Giorgio the drive. My phone rang at 11 p.m. I was helping June with her algebra homework, both of us exhausted, the kitchen table covered in pencil shavings and eraser dust. Summer. Giorgio's voice was quiet, careful. I need you to come to the office. Now. Bring June. My stomach dropped. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. But there's something on the drive you need to hear. The office was warm when we arrived, lit by a single desk lamp that cast long shadows across the bookshelves. Giorgio stood when we entered, his expression unreadable, and gestured to 2 chairs arranged side by side. Sit. Both of you. June looked at me, confused. I squeezed her hand and we sat. Giorgio placed a small speaker on the desk between us. His fingers hovered over the play button. The tech who decrypted Sangria found something in the metadata. An audio file, hidden in the directory structure. Dated 3 days before your mother's accident. He looked at me, his eyes steady. I think she knew something was coming. My throat tightened. What is it? Her voice. He pressed play. Static crackled through the speaker. Then my mother's voice filled the room, warm, familiar, achingly alive. Summer baby, if you're hearing this, then I didn't make it. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. June's hand found mine, gripping tight. I kept records of things I shouldn't have seen. Money moving through shells and saints' names, people who borrow God's words to wash blood off their hands. I made a copy because I thought, I hoped, it would keep us safe. Insurance. Leverage. A pause. The sound of her breathing, fast and shallow. But insurance only works if they believe you'll use it. And I couldn't. I thought about what it would do to you, to June, to drag you into something you didn't choose. So I hid it instead. Armor first, baby girl. Remember that. Lipstick first. Her voice cracked, softened. If you find this, make them choose paper over blood. Make them answer to documents and courtrooms and clean books. Don't let them turn this into theater. Your grandmother used to say that violence is what small men do when they run out of words. So give them words. Give them numbers. Make them count. Another pause. Longer this time. I love you both. More than anything. More than safety. And if I'm gone, her voice broke. Don't let them make you small. Don't let them make you quiet. You were born loud, Summer. Stay that way. The recording ended. Silence filled the office like water rising. Then June whispered, Mom. Not to me. To the speaker. To the ghost of the grandmother she barely remembered. And I broke. I wept the way I hadn't let myself weep at the funeral, at the insurance meetings, at the nights when June asked why Grandma wasn't coming back. I wept for the woman who'd counted money for men who killed her, who'd hidden a ledger in a lipstick tube, who'd chosen paper over blood and died for it anyway. June climbed into my lap, too big for it, all knees and elbows, and wrapped her arms around my neck, her face pressed to my shoulder. Giorgio stood and walked to the window, giving us space, his silhouette dark against the city lights. When I could finally breathe again, I looked up at him. Thank you. He turned. She was brave. You're her daughter. That means something. It means I don't get to stop. No. He came back to the desk, sat across from us, his hands folded. But it means you get to choose how you move forward. Legal on paper. Clean books. A future that doesn't eat you alive. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. June was still in my lap, her head on my shoulder, listening. I want to keep the role, I said. Front of house operations. I want to finish night school. And in 6 months, I want to sit for the forensic bookkeeping certification exam. Giorgio nodded. Done. And I want clear boundaries. A direct line to you, no intermediaries. Mutual leverage that builds trust instead of fear. If this is a partnership, it's equal. I count what you need counted, but I'm not your employee, I'm your auditor. Your conscience. A smile ghosted across his face. My conscience. I like that. And June stays protected. Always. Always, he said without hesitation. You have my word. On my name. June lifted her head, looked at Giorgio with eyes too old for 12. Are you a good man? He didn't flinch. I try to be. Most days. That's honest. She looked at me. I like him. I laughed, watery and raw. Yeah, baby. Me too. A week later, I walked back into the staff bathroom, the same black and white tile, the same fluorescent lights, the same mirror that had witnessed Cooper's hands on my throat and Giorgio's quiet intervention. But now it was mine. I stood in front of the mirror, pulled out my mother's lipstick tube, the real one, not the decoy with the drive, and applied it carefully. Red. Bold. Armor. I straightened my jacket, smoothed my hair, checked my reflection with the kind of precision my mother had taught me. The door opened behind me. Giorgio's reflection appeared in the mirror's edge, not looming, not crowding. Parallel. Equal. He was buttoning his cuff, the tiny gold cross at his throat catching the light. Doors. I asked. He glanced at his watch, then met my eyes in the mirror. Closing on time. I nodded once, picked up my order pad, and turned toward the dining room where clean books and honest revenue waited. He didn't rescue me. He handed me a mirror. I chose the armor, and the ledger did the cutting. The rest was just doors closing, one after another, quiet and certain. The way my mother would have wanted.